Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
Something very important happened on April 26, 2025. Many people around the world were watching Vatican City. This was the day of the funeral for Pope Francis. The service was held in the famous St. Peter's Square. This large, open area is right in front of St. Peter's Basilica, a very important church. Pope Francis had died just 5 days before this day. He was 88 years old. His death made many people feel sad. A very large number of people came to Vatican City for the funeral. Many were ordinary people, followers of the Catholic Church. They came from Italy and many other countries. They wanted to say goodbye to their leader. In the days before the funeral, many people visited St. Peter's Basilica. They walked past the Pope's body to show respect. Some people waited for many hours in long lines. Some even slept outside near the square the night before the funeral to get a good place. Important world leaders also arrived for the service. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, and queens came from countries all over the world. They traveled to Rome to show respect for Pope Francis. They sat in special seats near the front of the square. The Vatican is a very small country inside Rome, but on this day it felt like the center of the world. The Vatican officials estimated that maybe more than 250,000 people were in St. Peter's Square and the streets around it. It was a very large and quiet crowd. Pope Francis was famous around the world. Many people knew his face and his messages. He was born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Argentina. This made him special because he was the first pope from Latin America. People often described him as a simple and humble person. He chose to live in a guest house instead of the large papal apartments. He often spoke about helping poor people and taking care of the environment. He tried to understand the problems people face today. He wanted the church to be welcoming to everyone. Because Pope Francis was important to so many people, his death was big news everywhere. Newspapers, television, and websites talked about his life and his work. His funeral brought leaders and regular people together in one place. World leaders wanted to honor him. Ordinary people wanted to show their love and sadness. The whole world watched as they gathered to say goodbye to this well-known and respected figure. The event showed how much Pope Francis meant to millions of people, both Catholics and non-Catholics. His funeral was a significant global moment. 2. A sad day in Rome. The morning of the funeral was cool but sunny in Rome. It was Saturday, April 26, 2025. St. Peter's Square, a very large open space in Vatican City, was already full of people. The roads near the square were also crowded. It was difficult to find a place to stand. The Vatican said that more than 250,000 people were there. Many people came very early in the morning. Some people even slept outside the night before. They camped out near the square. Others waited in long lines for many hours. They all wanted to be there for Pope Francis. They wanted to say goodbye one last time. These people, called pilgrims, came from many different countries to show their respect. It was a very sad day for the people in the crowd. You could see sadness on many faces. Many people cried quietly, Tears fell as they thought about the Pope. He had died 5 days before and they missed him. They felt a big loss. Some people held pictures of him or small flags from their countries, but it was not only sadness in the square. Some people cried tears of sadness and also tears of joy. They were sad. He was gone, but they were also thankful for his life. They remembered the good things he did. They felt happy to celebrate his time as Pope. He gave hope to many people around the world, so there was sadness but also a feeling of thanks. The feeling in St. Peter's Square was quiet and respectful. Even though there were thousands of people, it was not noisy. People stood together. They did not know each other, but they shared the same feelings. It felt like everyone was part of one big family mourning together. They prayed or stood in silence. Everyone showed great respect for Pope Francis. The atmosphere was heavy with emotion, a mix of sorrow for his death and gratitude for the life he lived. 3. The church service. The special church service for Pope Francis took place in St. Peter's Square. This funeral mass was led by Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re. He was 91 years old and the leader of the College of Cardinals. Cardinal Re gave a talk called a homily during the service. He spoke kindly about Pope Francis. He said Francis had a lot of human warmth. He understood the difficult things happening in the world today. The cardinal explained that Francis truly shared the worries, pain, and hopes of people living now. Cardinal Re also said the Church could not go back from the changes Pope Francis started. He felt Francis paid attention to the world and what the Holy Spirit was doing in the Church. An official paper about Pope Francis's life was placed near his coffin. It said Francis showed everyone a wonderful example of being human, living a holy life, and caring like a father for the whole world. Pope Francis had asked for a simpler funeral. He changed some of the usual traditions himself. For example, most popes are buried in 3 coffins put inside each other. Pope Francis asked for only one simple wooden coffin. This showed his wish for simplicity. The Mass had several special moments. At the beginning, the Book of Gospels lay open on the coffin. This book holds important Christian writings. It symbolized the Word of God. Prayers were said in many languages during the service, including Italian, Spanish, Chinese, Portuguese, and Arabic. This showed the Church is present all around the globe. Music filled the square. Choirs sang beautiful old hymns in Latin. A special song, Psalm 130, was also sung. This is a tradition at funerals for popes. Many cardinals and bishops prayed together over the coffin. They used incense, which makes a sweet smoke, as part of the prayers. They sang a chant that means God has reigned from the wood of the cross. Later, men wearing white gloves, called pallbearers, carried the coffin out of the church building into the bright square. As the coffin appeared, the large crowd clapped loudly. Before the service ended, cardinals carefully tilted the coffin up a little bit. They did this so that people standing far back in the square could see it one last time. This made the crowd cheer again. After the Mass, the big bells of St. Peter's Basilica rang out sadly. 4. World leaders arrive. Many important people came to the funeral for Pope Francis. The front seats in St. Peter's Square were for them. These guests showed how much the world respected the Pope. Presidents, prime ministers, kings, and queens sat near the front. They came from many different countries. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, was there. He sat in the first row. Not far from him sat Volodymyr Zelensky, the President of Ukraine. It was important that they were both there because Pope Francis often talked about peace. Many first ladies and wives of leaders also attended. Melania Trump, Queen Letizia of Spain, and Jill Biden sat together. They wore traditional black lace veils on their heads. This is a custom for women at important Vatican events. They looked very serious and respectful. Royalty from Europe came to show respect. Prince William came from the United Kingdom. He is the future king. The British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, was also there. King Felipe VI and Queen Letizia came from Spain. King Harald V of Norway and King Carl XVI Gustaf of Sweden were present. Leaders from Belgium and Monaco also attended. It is usual for Catholic royal families to come to a pope's funeral. Leaders arrived from all over the world. President Javier Milei from Argentina was in the front row. This was special because Pope Francis was the first pope from Argentina. Other leaders from Latin America included President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from Brazil and President Gustavo Petro from Colombia. From Europe, President Emmanuel Macron of France came. President Frank-Walter Steinmeier of Germany and President Andrzej Duda of Poland were there too. Leaders from Asia also attended. President Draupadi Murmu of India sat near President Zelensky. The presidents of the Philippines and South Korea were present. China sent someone, but not a top leader. African leaders came to honor Pope Francis. President Julius Maada Bio of Sierra Leone and President Bolas Tinubu of Nigeria were among them. Pope Francis cared a lot about countries in Africa and other parts of the world. Italy, the country where Vatican City is located, had many leaders present. President Sergio Mattarella and Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni were there. Some leaders did not come, like the presidents of Russia and Israel. Their countries sent other people instead. Leaders from different religions also came. Patriarch Bartholomew I, an important Orthodox Christian leader, was there. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, represented the Anglican Church. People from Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and Hindu groups were also present. Their presence showed Pope Francis's work to bring different faiths together. 5. Goodbye, Pope Francis. The long church service in St. Peter's Square came to an end. A strong sound of clapping filled the air. This happened when helpers in white gloves carried the Pope's wooden coffin out into the bright sun. Before the coffin left the square, the cardinals carefully tilted it up a little bit. They did this so everyone, even people standing far back, could see the Pope's coffin one last time. The crowd saw this and cheered loudly for Pope Francis. Then the big bells of St. Peter's Basilica began to ring slowly. It was a sad sound marking the final goodbye in the square. After the service finished, the Pope's coffin was ready for a journey. It was placed carefully onto a special white car called the Popemobile. This car has an open back so people can see. The Popemobile started to drive slowly through the main streets of Rome. It was a quiet procession, but the streets were full of people. So many people came to watch the Pope pass by one last time. The police said about 150,000 people stood along the road. This road was 5.5 kilometers long, stretching from the Vatican. The people lining the streets were sad, but they also showed their love for Pope Francis. They cheered loudly. Many shouted Viva il Papa. This means long live the Pope in the Italian language. Others shouted Ciao Francesco, which is a friendly way to say goodbye Francis. Some people in the crowd waved signs they had made. Others threw flowers onto the road as the Popemobile went past them. A few people tried to reach out and quickly touch the car carrying the coffin. The slow drive went past famous old buildings and places in Rome, including the large Colosseum. Finally, the journey ended. The Popemobile arrived at a very old and important church called the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. Pope Francis was buried here. This was his special wish before he died. It was an unusual choice. Most popes are buried inside the Vatican city walls. Pope Francis was the first pope in more than 100 years to be buried in a church outside the Vatican. His burial was very simple, following his own requests. He did not want many fancy things. For example, he did not have the usual 3 coffins put one inside the other. He had only one simple coffin made of wood. Inside the wood coffin, there was a lining made of zinc, a type of metal. On the outside of the coffin lid, only one word was written, Franciscus. This is the Latin version of his name, Francis. The simple iron cross that Pope Francis often wore around his neck during his life was placed resting on the coffin lid. It was a quiet and humble end for a pope who was loved by people all over the world. He was now at rest in the Roman Church he had chosen. 6. Talking politics quietly. The funeral of Pope Francis was a very large event. Many important leaders from all over the world came to Vatican City. Because so many leaders were together in one place, it became a chance for them to talk politics quietly. These talks were not planned official meetings. They happened informally, maybe before or after the church service in St. Peter's Square. This idea of leaders meeting at sad events is sometimes called funeral diplomacy. It means leaders can talk more easily, even if their countries have problems or disagreements. An Italian expert, Pasquale Ferrara, explained this. He said that leaders can pass each other and whisper important things when they meet near a coffin. Events like funerals can help people talk when it is usually difficult. This has happened at other world leaders' funerals in the past, like in Japan or Iran. One very important quiet talk happened between the American President, Donald Trump, and the Ukrainian President, Volodymyr Zelensky. They were seated near each other for the service. Before the Mass began, they had a serious discussion about the war in Ukraine. People working for both presidents later said it was a good and useful talk. It was their first friendly meeting since the war started. Other leaders also used the time at the funeral to talk. Important leaders from the European Union, like Ursula von der Leyen and Roberta Metsola, were present. The French President Emmanuel Macron and the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer were also seen chatting with President Trump and President Zelensky. They likely discussed continuing support for Ukraine. Germany's leader, Olaf Scholz, also met informally with President Zelensky to talk about sending more help. Leaders from other parts of the world talked too. The president of Indonesia, Joko Widodo, was photographed talking with the leader of Qatar. It is thought that leaders from South America, like President Milei from Argentina and President Lula from Brazil, may have also met quietly, but they did not say so publicly. However, not every important world leader came to the funeral. President Vladimir Putin from Russia did not attend. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel also did not come. Their countries sent officials who were not the top leaders. The leader of China, Xi Jinping, was absent too. China sent a message of sympathy but not a high-level person. These absences showed the difficult relationships some countries have with each other or with the Vatican. Even so, the quiet talks that did happen were important. They showed how big international events like this can be used for diplomacy, not just for mourning. 7. The world remembers him. After Pope Francis died, messages of sadness and respect came from everywhere. People all over the world remembered him. The leader of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, said Pope Francis was an important voice for peace. He said the Pope helped people live with dignity and cared about justice. Guterres also said Pope Francis left behind a great example of faith and helping others, especially poor people and people in difficult places. Many world leaders shared similar thoughts. The President of Mexico called Pope Francis a good person who supported poor people, peace, and fairness. The President of Brazil felt sad to lose someone who showed respect for everyone. He said Pope Francis showed love and understanding. Leaders from other parts of the world also spoke. India's Prime Minister said people will remember Pope Francis for his kindness and courage. He remembered the Pope's work to help the poor. Leaders in Africa agreed. The President of Kenya said Pope Francis showed how to lead by being simple and caring for everyone, especially the poor. South Africa's president said people of all religions felt sad because Pope Francis tried to bring people together. In the Middle East, leaders remembered his efforts for peace. The President of Egypt called him a special world leader who spoke for Palestinian rights. The President of Turkey mentioned the Pope's work during difficult times, like the problems in Palestine. The President of Israel said Pope Francis was a man of strong faith and great kindness. The Palestinian president remembered when Pope Francis visited Bethlehem and asked for peace. Leaders from other Christian churches also shared their feelings. The Archbishop of Canterbury said Pope Francis was a pope for the people, showing kindness and love. Leaders from Orthodox churches sent messages too. Leaders from Muslim and Jewish groups also remembered him kindly. They respected his work to build connections between different religions. Ordinary Catholic people around the world felt the loss deeply. Many churches held special services. In countries like Italy and Poland, bells rang sadly and flags were lowered. In Rome, huge crowds had waited to say goodbye. Around the world, people prayed together in their towns and villages. Even people who were not Catholic lit candles or had moments of silence for him. People remembered Pope Francis for many important things. He worked hard for peace between countries. He always spoke about helping poor people and migrants. He cared a lot about protecting our planet, the Earth. He also spent time talking with leaders of different religions to build understanding. His life showed kindness and a simple way of living. 8. The Pope's legacy. Pope Francis's death brought big changes. His life and work left a strong mark on the world. People everywhere felt his effect. Now the Catholic Church must choose a new leader. Soon, the cardinals will meet in Rome for the conclave. They have a big decision. Will the Church continue Pope Francis's path? He wanted a more open church that helped people on the edges of society. Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re said clearly that there was no going back from the changes Francis made. He asked people to remember Francis's work helping poor people, migrants, and the planet. Pope Francis was also important in world politics. He spoke about big problems like climate change. He asked rich countries to help poorer ones. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called him a voice for peace and helping people. Francis built connections with leaders from many countries. Some people worry that these important topics will get less attention now, but many world leaders promise to continue his work. Francis was special because he brought different groups together. He was the first pope from Latin America. He worked hard to build bridges between different religions. He often met with Muslim, Jewish, and other Christian leaders. Many people, not just Catholics, respected him. They saw him as a priest for everyone. He believed in talking and understanding. Pope Francis showed everyone how to live simply. He chose not to be buried in the Vatican. He asked for a simple place in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. He often visited this church. His coffin was simple wood with just his name, Franciscus, on it. The modest iron cross he always wore rested on top. He lived in a modest guest house and wore plain shoes. He showed humility in his life. Pope Francis touched many lives inside and outside the Catholic Church. The King of Belgium said his legacy lives in the people he inspired to build a better world. Canada's leader said Francis showed what good leadership means today. People of all beliefs felt sad when he died. They remembered his calls for peace and helping others. His messages of service, kindness, and dialogue were clear even at his funeral. His memory will continue to guide people. What memory or aspect of Pope Francis's life stands out most to you?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.